Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. When Alibaba was still just an idea, my morning started in silence, without rush. While the world was still asleep, I'd sit down with a cup of tea and reflect on the kind of day I wanted to create. It wasn't some magical routine. It was just my way of taking control before the flood of messages and tasks arrived. Starting the day like this gave me clarity, because if the first thing you do when you wake up is check your phone, your focus is no longer yours. It's curious how one simple habit can shape your energy. You open your eyes and dive straight into a sea of notifications, and before you know it, your mind is racing against time. That's not productivity, that's survival. Waking up with intention is like giving your brain a clear command. Today, I lead. If you want more focus, more presence, and less stress, start the first few minutes of your day in silence. Take a deep breath. Stare at the ceiling. Listen to your thoughts before listening to the world. A lot of people think success starts with big ideas, but in reality, it starts with small decisions. Deciding not to touch your phone for the first 20 minutes. Deciding that your first thought will be your own, not a problem someone sent you. That's self-awareness in motion. And that's where the energy you'll use for everything comes from. Work, creativity, even your relationships. It's not about waking up at 5 a.m., it's about waking up with purpose. Some people say they don't have time for these things. I get it. But what's missing isn't time, it's priority. How you start your morning sets the tone for your life. If you start rushed, you end exhausted. But if you begin with calm and direction, the day might still bring challenges, but you'll be ready. That's self-discipline. And honestly, it doesn't matter where you are, in a simple room or a glass office, what you do in those first moments of the day is still your choice. So before diving into the whirlwind of commitments, take a moment just for yourself. It's not selfish, it's strategic. When you choose to begin the day with focus, gratitude, or even just a few quiet minutes, you're not wasting time. You're gaining power. The life transformation you're looking for might be hiding right there, in the seconds before your first touch of the screen. And who knows what might change when you start listening more to yourself. I've never seen energy as something abstract. To me, it has always been like a bank account, limited, valuable, and easy to waste. In Alibaba's early years, I had no investors, no structure, just energy and willpower. And I learned quickly, if I used it poorly, there'd be nothing left for what truly mattered. So I began to treat it like a strategic asset. Every conversation, every thought, every emotion, it all came with a cost. Have you ever stopped to realize that you feel tired not because you're doing too much, but because you're giving too much to things that drain you? Spending hours on social media, arguing with people who don't listen, trying to please those who will never appreciate it. All of that is emotional expense. Once I realized that, everything shifted. I started saying no more often, even when it was uncomfortable. It wasn't arrogance. It was self-preservation. You have to protect your energy like you protect your most valuable asset. I like to say, if not now, when? If not me, who? That line has always pushed me forward, even on days when everything felt like a waste. I realized that self-discipline is not just doing what needs to be done, it's also stopping what's draining you. And this filter defines your capacity to grow. Because if you don't invest your energy in personal development, in goal setting, in cultivating a success mindset, someone else will use it for you, and probably not for your benefit. Want a simple example? Think of every negative thought as emotional debt. You pay interest in anxiety, fatigue, and doubt. Now, think of every positive action as an investment. You earn returns in focus, clarity, and motivation. The key is spotting energy leaks before they drain you. Sometimes it's a project you no longer believe in. Sometimes it's a person, or even a habit that seems harmless, but slowly steals your spark. Energy determines whether you move forward or stay stuck. There's no point in having the best ideas if you don't have the energy to carry them out. That's why every day you must ask yourself, where am I spending my attention? What's fueling me and what's draining me? This self-check is where freedom begins. Because in the end, it's not about doing more, it's about doing better. And when you protect your energy, you're protecting your future. People often chase productivity tips and success habits, hoping to squeeze more out of their day, but forget that the real game changer is where they invest their attention. Focused energy, not just effort, creates transformation. So, start thinking like a strategist. Where is your energy going? And is it truly building the life you want? Back when I knocked on the doors of more than 30 companies and received 30 rejections, I realized something that changed my life. No one was coming to rescue me. Not a company, not the government, not a university. And as harsh as that may sound, it was the most liberating truth I've ever encountered. Because from that moment on, I stopped waiting and started acting. That's where real-life transformation begins. When responsibility stops being a burden and becomes your superpower. Waiting for validation is a quiet addiction. You do something and then look around, hoping for applause. But the world is too busy with its own problems to notice your dreams. When I saw that, I made a decision that shifted everything. I was going to move forward, even without the claps. That's how Alibaba was born. Not out of certainty, but out of refusing to wait. If I'd stood still until someone believed in me, I'd still be waiting today. If you want real change in your life, start now. Not tomorrow, not after the next crisis, now. Because self-improvement doesn't entertain excuses, only action. There's a Chinese proverb I like. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best is now. And if you're still waiting for perfect courage, let me tell you a secret. It never comes. You act first, and courage shows up along the way. That feeling of abandonment, of being on your own, can sting at first, but it can also fuel you. When I started, many friends said the idea of a marketplace in China was ridiculous, and maybe it was. But while they laughed, I was testing, failing, trying again. And over time, that crazy idea became a company that changed lives. Not because someone saved me, but because I stopped waiting to be saved. Of course, having support is great, but depending on it, that's dangerous. You have to build a foundation within yourself, strong enough to carry you even when no one else believes. That's what defines mental resilience and a true success mindset. When you stop asking for permission to be great, that's when you truly begin to grow. And the most surprising part, you'll realize you never needed permission, only a decision. Feeling drained? It's easy to blame your to-do list, but the real weight often comes from who, not what, is around you. In my journey with Alibaba, I learned a powerful truth. You don't need everyone by your side, just the right people, and that includes your inner self. Surrounding yourself with energy multipliers, not energy thieves, is one of the most underrated success habits. If your environment is toxic, no strategy will work. It's not just about setting boundaries with others, it's about setting them with yourself. There were times I had to walk away from conversations, deals, even partnerships that looked promising on paper but felt wrong in my gut. Saying no isn't selfish, it's self-discipline. It's deciding that your peace, your clarity, and your purpose matter more than pleasing everyone. And trust me, the right people won't need convincing. They'll respect your space because they value your energy. I've always believed in a concept I call emotional soil. Just like plants can't grow in poisoned ground, your ideas, focus, and creativity can't grow in emotional chaos. So I started curating my circle like a CEO curates a leadership team. If someone was constantly negative, always complaining, never supporting. They had to go, not with anger, but with intention. Because protecting my personal growth wasn't just wise, it was necessary. Sometimes the heaviest weight you carry is someone else's opinion. I used to think I needed to explain my every step. Now I realize that clarity doesn't require an audience. You owe no one a reason for choosing peace. And when you step away from what drains you, space opens up for what strengthens you. Gratitude practices, meaningful conversations, and even your own voice, which may have been buried under noise for years. People think self-awareness is just reflection, but often it's subtraction. Removing habits, people, or expectations that block your flow. The more I simplified, the more I thrived. And it's ironic. The fewer people I tried to please, the more I connected with those who truly saw me. Maybe your next level isn't about doing more. Maybe it's about cutting the cord with what no longer fits the version of you that you're becoming. Have you ever tried to be enough for someone who simply didn't care? That kind of effort is one of the most draining things we do to ourselves. In the early days of Alibaba, I spent too much time trying to prove our idea was valid to people who had already made up their minds. Until one day I realized, if someone doesn't see your value, turning up the brightness won't help. You don't need to shine harder. You need to shift your spotlight. Validation from the wrong audience is like applause in an empty theater. Loud, but meaningless. I used to think recognition equaled success. Now I see it differently. Real value lives in action, not opinion. If someone doesn't recognize your worth, that's their limitation, not yours. And when I stopped trying to explain myself, I found clarity. That's when self-belief took root, and the success mindset started to grow. You don't rise by convincing others. You rise by becoming undeniable, first to yourself. That means choosing to live authentically, even when no one's clapping. There's a quiet power in simply walking away from people and places where you're invisible. When I did that, something shifted. The right people started showing up. Not because I screamed louder, but because I stopped whispering who I was. That's personal development in motion, the kind that starts with release, not effort. You can spend years editing yourself for an audience that was never yours. Or you can shift your focus to the mission in front of you. That's what I did when I decided to build Alibaba, not for praise, but for purpose. And when the motivation changed, the results followed. Chasing recognition is exhausting. Living your truth is energizing. And that's where real empowerment begins. Not when they approve, but when you stop needing it. If your worth feels like it's constantly on trial, maybe it's time to change the courtroom. You weren't made to convince, you were made to create. When you stop performing for people who don't even clap, space opens up for those who truly see you. And as I learned, your brightest impact comes when you stop asking to be seen and start acting from the belief that you already matter. When I started Alibaba, I had no idea how to code, lead a company, or scale a global business. Honestly, I barely knew how to send an email. But what I did have was clarity. I didn't know how to do it, but I knew I had to try. That certainty is what carried me. I wasn't prepared, but I was willing. And that's what people don't realize. Willpower development doesn't begin when you're ready. It begins when you're done waiting. The biggest thief of dreams is the idea that you need more time, more knowledge, more confidence. I've seen so many brilliant people stuck in planning mode, rehearsing success while life passes them by. It's like wanting to catch a rabbit and thinking you need to change the rabbit. No, if you want to catch the rabbit, don't change the rabbit, change yourself. You become the kind of person who's ready by starting the chase. Confidence isn't a requirement, it's a result. It grows with every step, every stumble, every moment you act despite fear. The first version of anything you create won't be perfect. Mine wasn't, but it existed. And once something exists, it can evolve. Waiting for perfection is a trap disguised as preparation. But success habits are built through motion, not theory. Start, adjust, grow. That's the cycle that creates momentum. Most people don't fail because they tried too soon. They fail because they never tried at all. I remember when my venture capitalist told me, "Jack, you should give your CEO job to someone else because you don't know how to be a CEO." And maybe he was right. But I stayed. I learned, and I became one. Not because I was the best, but because I was the one who showed up. You don't have to be amazing to begin, but you do have to begin to become amazing. Every time you wait for the perfect moment, you're delaying your growth. Productivity, self-discipline, motivation, all of them grow stronger when they're used, not stored. Stop rehearsing and step into the spotlight, even if your voice shakes. That's where real resilience is built. In action, in motion, in the willingness to move before you feel prepared. I've always believed the greatest asset in any business is not its product, it's its people. And for each person, the greatest asset is the mind. If your thoughts are constantly invaded by fear, comparison, and noise, how can you lead? In the early days of Alibaba, I had to protect my mental space like a fortress. Not because I was perfect, but because I knew how easily chaos enters through an open door. Your mind deserves filters, strong ones. What you consume becomes what you create. If your day starts with panic-inducing news or endless scrolling, don't be surprised when anxiety follows you around. I made it a habit to choose carefully. Books that expanded me, conversations that challenged me, silence that grounded me. This is self-awareness and continuous learning and practice. Not glamorous, but essential. Like a CEO reviews reports, you must review your mental inputs daily. Some call it discipline. I call it direction. You see, emotional intelligence is about knowing when to tune in and when to tune out. I've walked out of meetings because the energy was wrong. I've ignored trends because they didn't align with my vision. And that's not stubbornness, that's leadership. The quality of your thoughts is directly tied to the quality of your outcomes. If you wouldn't drink dirty water, don't feed your mind with mental pollution. Think of your mind like a company's brand. Every impression matters. Every word you allow in shapes your identity. So I started guarding my inputs like gold. Podcasts, music, even social circles. If it didn't elevate, it didn't enter. This wasn't about being closed off. It was about being clear. Personal growth thrives in environments of clarity. And clarity comes when the noise goes down and your vision gets louder. People often ask me how I stayed focused building Alibaba during the chaos. The answer isn't magic, it's intention. Every day I asked, what do I want to think today? Not what the world wants me to think. That question changed everything. Because once you own your thoughts, you own your results. The future isn't shaped by talent alone. It's shaped by those who filter their focus and protect it like it's their legacy. Most people think courage looks like jumping off cliffs or making huge, bold moves. But the kind of courage that built Alibaba? It was quiet. It lived in the early mornings, in the repetition, in showing up when no one was watching. I call it silent courage, the kind that doesn't post on social media, but moves mountains behind the scenes. It's the courage of getting up again and again, even when everything feels heavy. Discipline, I've found, is the daily face of bravery. Anyone can be inspired in a moment of emotion, but staying consistent when the excitement fades, that's where the magic is. It's easy to dream big. The hard part is to act small, every single day. When I started, I wasn't chasing motivation. I was building rituals. And those habits, not luck, are what carried me through setbacks and rejection after rejection. People love to talk about purpose, but purpose without structure is like fire without wood. I saw many talented people burn out because they waited for passion to push them. I didn't wait. I created rhythm. I built simple systems that grounded me, waking up early, writing down intentions, reviewing my goals. This is productivity, self-discipline, and goal setting in motion. And when you turn routine into ritual, it becomes your quiet superpower. I've often said, when you're poor, if you have a dream, you never feel poor. That dream gives you energy, but only if you feed it with action. The small, unseen steps, writing that proposal, learning a new skill, following up one more time, that's where mental resilience grows. Courage isn't loud, it's patient. It's not waiting for the perfect mood. It's choosing to do the work even when no one else believes in you yet. And here's something people miss. It's in the routine that identity is formed. You become the kind of person who wins by repeating behaviors that winners choose. There were days I didn't feel strong, but I still showed up. That rhythm didn't make me fearless. It made me ready. Ready to lead, to fail, to grow. Because in the end, courage doesn't show up once. It shows up every morning, in the way you begin, the way you continue, and the way you refuse to quit. Fatigue doesn't always come from effort. Sometimes it comes from being out of alignment. I've felt it before. Working hard, but feeling empty, moving fast, but going nowhere meaningful. And that's when I realized, exhaustion isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's your soul pulling the emergency brake because you're drifting from what matters. When you're not aligned with your purpose, even rest won't restore you. We often confuse productivity with purpose. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're moving forward. When I spent my days on tasks that didn't light me up, the drain was immediate. But when I worked on things that mattered, even late into the night, I felt energized. That's the difference between pressure and passion. One depletes you, the other drives you. That's where self-awareness and life transformation really begin. You know that feeling when a project lifts you up instead of weighing you down? That's alignment. It's not always about ease, but about direction. I've worked on extremely difficult ventures that left me smiling, simply because they made sense to my core. Alignment doesn't mean comfort, it means clarity. And clarity, I've found, gives more energy than coffee ever could. Alignment is about asking hard questions. What am I really working toward? Who am I doing this for? And is it still true to who I want to become? These aren't easy to answer. But every time I paused to realign, my next steps became lighter. Like rowing with the current instead of against it. That's the secret behind long-term personal development. Not grinding, but aligning. I often told my team, if you don't know where you're going, every path will exhaust you. It wasn't just about business, it was about life. You can't build momentum on a shaky foundation. When your values and actions align, everything changes. You make better decisions, attract better people, and wake up with real energy, not just adrenaline. Because the real fatigue isn't from doing too much. It's from living disconnected from your truth. People say, I just don't have time. But I believe time is not what's missing. Clarity is. Every day gives us 24 hours, just like it gave to Einstein, Mandela, and every entrepreneur I admire. The difference is how we spend it, or better yet, how we protect it. Because in today's world, your time isn't slipping away. It's being stolen. By distractions disguised as urgency. By conversations that go nowhere. By priorities that aren't even yours. When I built Alibaba, I didn't have extra hours lying around. I had clarity. I knew exactly what mattered most and cut away what didn't. That was my competitive edge. Time management isn't about doing everything. It's about doing what matters first. And that requires courage. Saying no is uncomfortable. But every yes to something meaningless is a no to your real mission. That's the trade-off too many people ignore. Your energy and your hours are like a garden. If you don't weed it daily, overgrowth takes over. And modern distractions? They're the weeds. Social media, gossip, overplanning, all of it looks busy but leaves you stuck. I had to create personal rules to guard my schedule. Mornings for vision, afternoons for action, evenings for reflection. This wasn't perfection, it was self-discipline and productivity by design. The worst time thief is indecision. Every time you hesitate, double-check, or seek unnecessary approval, you lose momentum. I once spent weeks on a simple pitch, overthinking every word, until I remembered, imperfect action beats perfect delay. You don't need more hours, you need sharper focus. That's what separates the achievers from the dreamers. Success habits are forged in how you guard your time, not how long you hustle. So next time you feel like the day disappeared, ask, who took it? Was it fear? Was it distraction? Was it someone else's priority? And then, start reclaiming it. Even 5 minutes, fully owned, is more powerful than 5 hours scattered. When your time aligns with your goals, your progress multiplies. You can't create more hours, but you can command more meaning in every one you already have. Most people think they need motivation to start. I found the opposite to be true. Action creates motivation. If you wait to feel inspired, you'll be waiting forever. I didn't wake up every day excited to work on Alibaba. Some days, I was tired, uncertain, even afraid. But I moved anyway. And each small action reminded my mind, we're doing this. That rhythm is what turned fear into fuel. It's like working out. You don't sweat first and then decide to run. You run, and then the energy kicks in. That's how self-discipline works. I used to believe I needed a great idea to feel driven. Now I know. Even a clumsy first step can trigger personal growth. Momentum doesn't come from perfect plans. It comes from motion, from doing something, anything, that signals commitment. So many people wait for the stars to align, but the stars only align for those already walking. I created a rhythm, not just routines, morning reflections, writing down goals, setting micro deadlines. These small movements turned into a drumbeat that kept me moving, even on hard days, especially on hard days. That's where mental resilience grows, not in peak moments, but in consistent movement. You don't need to feel good to do good. In fact, doing the right thing often creates the good feeling you're waiting for. It's a reversal that changes everything. Stop chasing motivation. Chase rhythm. When you build a consistent beat into your life, you create progress on demand. That's productivity tips in action. Not hacks, but habits. Every successful person I know isn't always inspired. They're just always in motion. When you lower the bar for starting, just 5 minutes of effort, just one task, just one push, you make success inevitable. Because progress doesn't depend on your mood. It depends on your movement. And once you move, motivation follows. Always. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is say, I'm done. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. I've had to walk away from people, meetings, and even entire opportunities, not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much about my peace. Not everyone deserves access to your time. That line changed everything for me. You can't grow if you're constantly shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown. We often think strength is staying, but true self-awareness is knowing when to step back. I used to feel guilty for distancing myself from negativity, from those who always complained, who drained my focus. But guilt is not the same as responsibility. Your time is a gift, your energy is limited, and protecting both isn't selfish, it's survival, especially when you're building something that matters. I've seen brilliant people burn out, not because they failed, but because they refused to leave what was breaking them. Relationships, jobs, even old identities. They clung to roles they had long outgrown. I've done that too, until I realized that every time you walk away from what weakens you, you make space for what strengthens you. That's not quitting, that's choosing. Choosing personal growth over people-pleasing. Silence, space, solitude, they're not signs of disconnection. They're tools for realignment. I've taken walks alone, sat in quiet corners, and asked myself, who am I becoming? That question helped me release the guilt and embrace the journey. You're not meant to carry everyone. Sometimes the most powerful act of emotional intelligence is knowing when to let go. When you protect your space, you protect your vision. You don't owe everyone an explanation. Sometimes, no is a full sentence. And when you stop apologizing for creating boundaries, you begin to reclaim your energy, your purpose, and your future. Because you can't control other people, but you can absolutely control who you allow into your world. In the beginning, my presentations were a mess. My English was broken, my slides were too simple, and my jokes often made sense only to me. But you know what? That's exactly why people connected. I wasn't trying to impress. I was trying to be understood. And there's power in that. People don't want perfection. They want connection. They want authenticity. And that starts with being real. I've learned that the pursuit of perfection is often a disguise for fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure. But perfection is a moving target. The more you chase it, the more it slips away. What works is showing up as you are, flaws, doubts, and all. That's what makes you relatable. That's where your emotional intelligence shows up, not in polished speeches, but in honest words and courageous stumbles. I remember early investor meetings where I didn't have all the answers. I could have faked it, but instead I said, I don't know yet. That vulnerability built trust. It told people I was human, not a machine. And ironically, that's what gave them confidence in me. Because when you're real, you're consistent. You're not performing, you're being. And that builds something more powerful than approval. It builds belief. Self-belief doesn't come from proving you're perfect. It comes from knowing you're enough as you grow. I've made countless mistakes. Some cost me time, others money. But every mistake added depth to my journey. And that's something no polished image can replicate. When you embrace imperfection, you step into real personal development, the kind that inspires others to do the same. So forget flawless, be true. Your greatest advantage isn't your resume, your followers, or your image. It's your truth. That's what no one can copy. That's what creates real connection, real progress, and real transformation. Because in a world full of filters and scripts, showing up as your whole, imperfect self might just be the boldest thing you ever do. Everyone wants the outcome. Few are willing to pay the price. When I started Alibaba, I gave up stability, sleep, and the illusion of security. There were days we couldn't afford office space and nights when I questioned everything. But the dream was bigger than the discomfort. People talk about success habits. Well, here's one they forget. Sacrifice. Without it, dreams remain just that. Dreams. Too many want to harvest without planting. They crave results without risk. But success is not delivered. It's earned through discomfort, delay, and deliberate choices. I missed birthdays, said no to vacations, and reinvested every cent we made. Was it easy? Never. Was it worth it? Every second. Because what we were building wasn't just a business. It was a vision, a mission. a life transformation worth every trade. There's a misconception that passion makes the process painless. It doesn't. Passion makes the pain meaningful. And that's the difference. When you know your why, sacrifices stop feeling like loss and start feeling like investment. That's where self-discipline becomes your superpower. You stop asking, is this fair? And start asking, is this worth it? The answer, for me, was always yes. People often ask me how we survived when everyone said our idea would fail. The truth? We didn't survive. We committed. Fully. I told my team, you can't have everything, but you can have what matters most. And that became our filter. If it didn't move us closer to the dream, it was cut. That's how you create momentum. That's how you build something bigger than yourself. So if you're struggling right now, ask yourself, what are you willing to give up to get where you say you want to go? Because personal growth comes at a price. And the currency isn't always money. It's time, focus, consistency, and the courage to choose the long game over instant gratification. Nothing extraordinary is built in comfort, but everything extraordinary is built in commitment. Real transformation doesn't start outside, it begins within. For years, I thought the world had to shift for things to improve. The government needed to change, the market needed to change, even luck needed to change. But then I realized the real shift had to come from me. And once that happened, everything else started to move. Not instantly, but inevitably. Change is never easy, but neither is staying the same. Making a decision to change is like grabbing the wheel of your own life. You stop blaming and start building. I had to stop pointing fingers and start asking better questions. What can I control? What can I improve? That's when personal development took root. That's when my actions stopped reacting to the world and started shaping it. It wasn't a single moment. It was a series of daily decisions. Change is uncomfortable because it requires letting go. Old habits, old beliefs, even old versions of yourself. But what's scarier than changing is looking back years from now and realizing you never even tried. I felt that fear of failing, of being wrong, of losing. But I feared regret more. So I moved, slowly, then faster. That's how self-improvement works. Not in giant leaps, but in quiet choices. One of the hardest things I ever did was admit, this isn't working anymore. In business, in leadership, in life, that admission is where progress begins. Because if you lie to yourself, you stall. But when you're honest, brutally honest, doors open. New ideas come. Better people show up. That's mental resilience in motion, the willingness to evolve, even when it's hard. I tell people all the time, stop waiting. The world doesn't owe you change. It responds to your decisions. When you shift, you create ripples. You inspire others. You rewrite your story. So what are you waiting for? A sign? A green light? Here it is. Your next level begins the moment you choose to stop surviving and start living. In the end, everything you do, everything you are, emits something. Long before you speak, your energy speaks for you. When I walked into investor meetings or team huddles, I quickly realized it wasn't my pitch that made the first impression. It was my energy. That silent frequency either pulled people in or pushed them away. And over time, I understood. Energy is your invisible identity. Your habits, your mindset, your inner voice, all of it creates the vibration that shapes your results. If you feed your mind with fear, your energy will reflect hesitation. If you feed it with purpose, you radiate certainty. I began treating my self-discipline and gratitude practices like energy work. It wasn't just about performance, it was about presence. Because the right energy doesn't just attract, it builds. People often focus on strategy, skills, tools, but they forget the foundation, your state. The version of me who doubted, who hesitated, who played small, he didn't build Alibaba. The version who believed, who showed up with clarity and optimism, he did. When you elevate your energy, your reality follows. It's not magic. It's alignment. It's how positive thinking, visualization, and self-belief become transformation. I've seen entire teams shift when one person raises their frequency. That's the ripple effect of leadership. Not just telling people what to do, but showing them what's possible through who you are. Protecting your energy isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional, about choosing spaces, people, and thoughts that lift you higher. That's the fuel behind success mindset and empowerment. So ask yourself, what am I radiating today? Because your energy either opens doors or closes them. It draws in opportunity, collaboration, connection, or it repels them. When you treat your energy like a rare gem, everything changes. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people fully charged with clarity, purpose, and authenticity. The world needs you.
It was one of the most powerful and transformative presentations the internet has ever witnessed. Jack Ma, the visionary entrepreneur behind Alibaba, didn't just talk about success. He revealed the deep, often overlooked truths behind personal transformation, resilience, and mastering energy in a chaotic world. With a rare blend of charisma, brutal honesty, and humble wisdom, Jack Ma led viewers through a journey that wasn't about theory. It was about real, lived experience. He began with a disarming reflection that how we start our morning sets the rhythm for everything. Not in theory, but in practice. As Jack Ma recounted his habit of beginning each day with clarity instead of notifications, viewers were forced to question their own routines and how they may be silently sabotaging their energy before breakfast. It wasn't about waking up early. It was about waking up with purpose. Jack then peeled back the truth about energy, not as a vague spiritual concept, but as a tangible currency. If not now, when? If not me, who? He asked. In that moment, millions felt the call to stop wasting their limited daily energy on distractions, negativity, or validation seeking. His metaphor of treating each complaint like emotional debt struck hard. For many, it was a wake-up call louder than any alarm. But perhaps the most liberating moment came when he declared that no one was coming to save us. And instead of feeling abandoned, people felt empowered. It wasn't harsh. It was freeing. Jack Ma's story of rejection, of building Alibaba after 30 job rejections, including from KFC, echoed like a drumbeat for anyone waiting on perfect conditions to begin. Throughout the presentation, Jack challenged the toxic pursuit of perfection, championed the power of vulnerability, and redefined courage, not as grand gestures, but as the choice to persist in quiet, disciplined action. He reminded us that routine is more powerful than luck, and that the most successful people aren't those who do more, but those who protect their energy fiercely. He talked about the hidden cost of overexposure to people, to negativity, and to information. Protecting your mind like a CEO protects their company became not just advice, but a mantra. And when Jack explained how alignment, not hustle, is the true fuel for productivity and joy, it changed the conversation around burnout forever. By the end, it was clear this was more than a motivational talk. It was a call to arms, to stop reacting and start creating, to stop performing and start becoming, to understand that your energy isn't just fuel. It's your signature, your frequency, your legacy. And when you finally decide to guard it, everything changes. So now the real question is, what are you going to do with all this knowledge? Are you going to let it fade into another motivational moment? Or will this be the spark that changes your rhythm, your decisions, your energy? Jack Ma didn't build $1 billion company by waiting for the perfect moment. He built it by acting when it felt impossible, by protecting his time, his mind, and his focus like sacred ground. Which part of this message hit you the hardest? Was it the idea that your energy is your identity? Or maybe the realization that no one is coming to save you? And that's actually the best news you've ever heard? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us which insight you're going to apply starting today. And don't be afraid to come back to this video whenever you need to recharge. That's what it's here for. But most importantly, subscribe to this channel right now. Don't rely on memory or luck to find it again. The algorithm may not bring you back, but your decision can. Hit the bell so you never miss the next insight that might change your path. And if this video moved something inside you, then you need to watch the next one. You don't need everything to start Jack Ma's abundance mindset, because everything you just learned is only the beginning of what you're truly capable of.